Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to Chelsea Fan TV and welcome to another episode of the Chelsea Fan TV podcast. First things first, guys, make sure you smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here, and as always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And following on from a big 4-1 win at Spurs on Monday night, it doesn't get any easier. We've got Man City at Stamford Bridge on Sunday afternoon, but there should be a lot more confidence in the side. Players are starting to get fit again, getting more used to each other. There's a bit more of a feel-good vibe around Chelsea, and hopefully, we can continue the positive momentum into that City game and not sit on a negative result heading into that international run. There's loads to get into, as always, with Chelsea. I'm delighted to be joined by Mitchell Rogers from the Chelsea Forum. Mate, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the show. Have you quite recovered from Monday night yet? Because it had everything.
No, still on cloud nine, to be honest. But yeah, what a game! I mean, a game pretty much dictated by VAR, so it's got to come in our favour now and again, and it did. So it was a great game.
It definitely was, and I think it was one of them where we were due some luck. I'm not saying we got lucky, but we were due some luck to go in our favour per se. Obviously, the red cards were totally justified and whatnot, but we needed a bit of luck in the game situation. I think we've had virtually no luck or nothing really go for us this season in terms of injuries, chances that have been missed, etc., and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's just a massive boost for everyone. But I mean, more than the 3 points, how important do you think it was obviously for Pochettino, and how important do you think it was for the group? Because we desperately needed this win. We were sitting 13th in the table before the game kicked off. We've got difficult fixtures coming up. Obviously, Poch going back to his old club. If we'd lost this game, I mean, not how I would be thinking, but there would be large sections of the fan base that would be starting to doubt him and maybe even turning against him already after, 10 or so games. So this was massive on a number of levels.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it made it even sweeter beating Spurs on their unbeaten run for this season. I think that was a big point to prove. And like you said, a few things went our way during the game, and the red cards definitely dictated the game and made things more justified. I was actually on a bit of like a tactical podcast last night also, and we were talking about the Chelsea Spurs game. And I sort of raised the question, if the yellow card initially handed out to Udogie was a red, could that have changed the game a little bit more? Do you think Spurs would have held back a little bit more? Do you think Romero, who's obviously lunged in towards Enzo, would have been a bit more, less brutal and kind of going for that challenge to obviously open things up for us in the game?
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. I mean, to be honest, they should have been both off well before they did go off. But yeah, look, we got the win. It was huge. In terms of what this means for Pochettino, obviously, there's always pressure for Chelsea managers. Yes, he's going to get time. The board are going to give him time and whatnot. They believe in him, and obviously this project is kind of not for the here and now. It is for kind of years down the line. But of course, it doesn't mean that you can't you don't have to get results in that here and now. How big do you think this was for him, sort of for Chelsea and on a personal level?
Yeah, massive. I mean, especially going back to 3-point lane. Sorry, White Hart Lane. But massive. I think more mentally than anything, regardless of the performances, I think it was huge for our group of young players, knowing that they can go away. For the vast majority of them, it was the first time of them having a massive London derby against Spurs. So all of those emotions would have been riding high. And I think actually walking away with the 3 points, no matter how we'd done it, I mean, there were chances in the game where we could have put 6 or 7 more in the back of the net. But no matter where you look at it, taking the 3 points at White Hart Lane is very important. And I think that's just going to, if anything, build confidence going forward with the likes of Nicholas Jackson, who ended up getting a hat-trick on the day. It wasn't the cleanest of hat-tricks, but I think, it's been the last 20 years since somebody's gone to Spurs and from Chelsea and got a hat-trick in the top 6 teams.
Yeah.
If anything, for these young players, again, Caicedo, goal disallowed. It was nice to see him actually pull the trigger and have a shot for once. I think there were certain aspects of the game where you could see that the players were all, fighting for it. I think you see Colwell at one point getting into a bit of an argument with Sarr. That, for me, it's just the psychological side of it. It's just such a big boost for our group of very young and obviously talented young players.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, even like at the end, I'm not sure if you saw the clip, but Gallagher having a bit of a go at Basuma because he refused to shake hands with him. Like they're just little things that have kind of been missing from Chelsea over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. So that winning mentality, that that never say die attitude on the pitch. I think those things are slowly starting to come back in, and the mentality looks a lot better as well. Even just going back to last season, you go 1-0 down in the first 5 minutes. you knew we weren't winning that game
Yeah.
last year. Now you go one down this season. Okay, we're not saying we're definitely going to win, but you feel a lot more confident in this side that we can get out there and turn it around. We are creating a lot more chances. Still, we are lacking kind of that centre forward or that one player that can put the ball in the back of the net on a regular basis. Yes, great for Nicholas Jackson, of course, but as you touched on, as a team, we probably should have had 8, 9, even 10 goals. That wouldn't even have been an exaggeration if we could just finish our chances or had someone kind of half competent in front of goal. I mean, look, it's huge for Jackson, but Pochettino saying in the press conference this afternoon, obviously Friday afternoon before the City game, that he's delighted for Jackson, but saying he's got to improve and he should have had 6 goals in the game against Spurs. That's kind of what you're looking for from the manager, demanding more from the players. The players obviously demanding more from themselves. But where do you stand with Nicholas Jackson? Obviously, he coming in the summer. No one really expected him to come in. He's only had really one season of top flight football. I think he played 46 or 45 games with Villarreal. Coming to Chelsea, suddenly found himself leading the line. I don't think that was ever the plan. I think he's done all right. If you look at the stats, he's got 5 goals in 10 Premier League games. It's 1 in 2. That's not that bad. And when you consider he wasn't meant to be the first choice striker to lead the line. Yes, he's frustrating. Yes, his play in the box has got to get a lot better. Yes, he needs to get better in the air. Yes, there's things that he needs to improve, and he's still rough, obviously, being the age that he's at. But all things considered, I actually don't think he's done that badly. I mean, what are your thoughts on him?
No, again, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with the vast majority of everything you just said. I think, again, a lot of people forget how young he is. And looking back to pre-season, he looked dominant in pre-season. Looked like he was just scoring goals for fun. I know, just sitting there on social media and having a look online, everybody saying he's the next Didier Drogba regen. I mean, and if we're going off that basis, you look at Drogba's first season at the Bridge, it wasn't nothing special. It's probably worse off now than where Jackson was when Drogba first came to us. But at the same time, I think Poch mentioned it in his press conference today. It's just patience. You've got to be patient with these young players. Again, it's just, I think at the moment, he hasn't really had this season anybody to compete with in his position. You've had Breuer, who's obviously been out injured. He came back for the game against Fulham. So, it might be, again, I could just be talking rubbish here. It might be a deep down subconscious thing where he's thinking, okay, well, I know I'm going to get into the starting team because there's nobody here who's going to take my place. If I'm playing as well as I am, I can potentially get a goal. He's been in all of those positions. But in terms of clinicalness, I think we could see him do a little bit more better with his hold-up play and just start to be a little bit more direct by running into the box, running in front of goal. Now we've got Reece James back, who's going to be coming from the right-hand side, who can actually put that ball into far better dangerous positions, slightly better than Gusto and Disasi, who we've had over the last couple of weeks since his injury. But again, I think after scoring the 3 goals, it's going to do nothing for him but gain him confidence going into the game against City. And regardless if we lost against Spurs on Monday, you're always going to be nervous playing against City. They've got 3 fantastic defenders that they play at the back, with the likes of Carl Walker. And I just think, what have we really got to lose? We've got this season now, and I think with all these, I wouldn't say necessarily expectations, but, a lot of fans are obviously frustrated, but they have to realise that it's a slow and painful process. You don't get to where you are being Chelsea Football Club by just winning things straight away. There were times back in the day where obviously we used to sack managers and get managers in, but at the same time, we're trying to build something here, hence why we've got such young players. And I think if you look at the likes of Jackson, give him a little bit of time. He's slowly adapting to a new league, and he will come good. I'm hoping that he will, and I personally think he will.
No, I think he will as well. I think it was Paul Merson saying something the other day, like, he's getting in all the right positions. Yes, his finishing is not great. You can say that for a number of the Chelsea attackers, not just him. Players a lot more experienced than him, struggling to put the ball in the back of the net of the club. But he gets in the right positions. He's all like, his off the ball work rate is great. I know that often gets kind of, doesn't get the credit it deserves from certain fans. They just kind of think they're running around like headless chickens sort of thing. But that work rate off the ball is massive. He gets in the right positions, and eventually, he will start sticking more of those chances away. I think, obviously, when Nkunku comes back from injury, hopefully in the Newcastle game after the international break, having Nkunku up there with him or playing off him or whatever, I think it's going to make a big difference. I always look at Jackson and think he's sort of that. He's a perfect kind of link-up striker, having someone to play off him. I know obviously Cole Palmer has played there, but it's not quite the same as what it would be with Nkunku playing there, almost as a front 2. on occasion. So look, I think that can definitely be of benefit to him. It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because as you said, realistically this season, unless the one time that we went false nine against Arsenal, Jackson pretty much been guaranteed to start almost every game. Yes, Broja started against Fulham when he was banned, and he obviously started against Burnley the game after, but he only lasted a half. You can get a little bit complacent. I'm not saying he's got complacent, but it's easy to get complacent when you know you're not going to be playing every week. But just on Broja, though, obviously another young striker, slightly different profile. He to me, he looks a little bit similar to sort of a younger version of Diego Costa in terms of that aggression, that sort of profile.
Physicality,
yeah, the physical. It's not quite happened for him yet. We saw a few glimpses last season. Then he gets the injury. We saw half a decent season on loan at Southampton. He's come back for a game or two where he looked pretty good again. He looks okay against Fulham. The half against Burnley was poor, and then he's been injured again. I mean, where do you stand with him? Because he did sign one of them new long-term contracts just over a year ago. I'm still really unsure on him. I don't think we've seen enough, but then at the same time, what we have seen, I don't think is that really the answer. I mean, where are you with him?
Yeah, no, I can understand where you're coming from. Again, I think it's so difficult, especially when players are dipping in and out of injuries, because you never get the full flow of their performances or their potential. Because if they are just picking up knocks here and there, and obviously coming back from his ACL injury, it put a massive hold back on his development. I think he's one of those players that kind of thrives on confidence and game time. So, but again, it's obviously a bit demoralising for him at the moment where he can't break into the team due to an injury. But I think I've just seen now he's available for the weekend. So I'm sure we'll see him pick up some minutes. I mean, I personally do think he has a great future at Chelsea. I think he's a fantastic young player, mentally headstrong. Again, he gets on really well with the team. You can tell sort of within the environment at the Bridge and at Cobham, these boys have a great chemistry. Again, I think we've not seen the best of him just due to the fact that he hasn't been playing. I think he's got a lot to offer. But again, at the same time, it's just, just keeping him fit. I think it can be a real contender for Jackson if Jackson's playing as, not necessarily as well as we expect him to be. But like you said, he's got his goal ratios 1 in 2 games. So I think if you give Broja a run in games, he looked really great against the game in Fulham. Just continuously pressing back, putting Leno under so much pressure. Again, with Broja, I feel like it's kind of what you just said. The fans sort of don't pick up what these players sort of do off the ball, as if they're just running around like headless chickens. But as we know, sort of Poch has obviously come in, and during the pre-seasons, he's just got them running, doing suicide drills, just getting their fitness up, just to keep a constant pressure. And I think, after a couple games, he'll nurse his way back into injury. We have an international break coming up as well, so give him a little bit more time, just build up a bit of fitness. But I won't be surprised if he comes in with a bit of vengeance, to be honest, and tries to actually claim that, the number 9 shirt, with Jackson not performing as well as we expected. So I think it's going to be a real test for both players, to either Nicholas Jackson to hold that number 9 or for Broja to come in and take it off him. It's
good competition. Yeah, no, definitely. And of course, with the African Cup of Nations in January, obviously Jackson will be going off for that. Broja will be desperate to be fit for that, so he can obviously lead the line in his absence. I mean, obviously, we don't know who's going to come in January. Maybe Ivan Toney comes or whatever. But I would say, just touching on what you said about, Broja needing a run of games, etc. All young players need a run of games to build their confidence. And I guess this perhaps might be, for me, one of the drawbacks of the route that we've gone down in terms of our recruitment, because young players need time, need game time to develop, need a run of games. But when all the players, or the vast majority of the players, are young, they're all taking minutes off each other that they need. So look, I don't dislike this approach we've done. I think it's good, and I think it's going to be a positive thing in the long run. But one of the major drawbacks for me is definitely that, all these guys that need the minutes and need a run of games are going to be taking the minutes off each other, and they're competing for the same position. Like with Jackson and Broja, yes, Broja needs a run of like 3 or 4 starts or whatever. But then what does that mean for Nicholas Jackson? Because he probably also needs that. So it is a bit of a drawback. Would you agree with that? Do you see many other drawbacks to kind of the approach we're going down? Because I think for me that's the main one. Because these players aren't all going to develop at the same rate, because they're just simply not going to get the exposure in the first team that they all need.
Yeah, no, spot on, 100%. It is very difficult to give players a run of game times when you're taking minutes away from other young players also, so it's very difficult. Like, for example, you got right winger position, Palmer's been playing there recently, but you've got the likes of Noni Madueke, who's obviously great as a right winger, but he's not had much game time just due to certain incidents off the pitch. And also, how can you drop Cole Palmer at this point?
Can't.
You know, he's undroppable. He makes it into pretty much any first team in the Premier League with some of the performances that he's been putting on. So again, but then you've got that in multiple positions over the course of the pitch. So it is a very difficult one. Sterling and Mudryk, for example. Sterling had a great game against Spurs. I don't think he's been particularly where we need him to be this season, considering he's the second most senior player in the squad. So with that comes a lot of responsibility. But again, you're kind of holding back a little bit of progression from Mudryk. Obviously, there's been setbacks in, but again, you look into the centre of the midfield. We've got Ugo coming in as a CM, the DM as well. So it's going to be very difficult.
You've got Lavia to come back as well.
You've got Lavia to come back. I mean, we've got, we're very blessed with such a pick of the bunch, but sometimes it's, you kind of bite off more than you can chew when you try and recruit some of the best players in the world with their potential that they can exceed. How are they ever going to reach their potential if they're not playing? Do we send them out to Starsberg? I mean,
it's not. I mean, we touched on midfield briefly there. Obviously we've got Lavia to come back. Ugo Chukwu finding his feet. I've been impressed with him in the games that he has played. But then you realise, you've got the likes of Andre Santos and Cassidy that are still on loan and to come back, who looked half decent in pre-season. Like there isn't room for all these guys. So I understand that not all these guys are going to make it. Some are going to have been bought at a cheaper price and they're going to be sold on for profit. I get the model is going to work both ways, but you do sort of feel at times with some of the recruitment, particularly more of the younger players. I'm not talking about the young ones that are playing now, but more of the ones that have gone on loan or ones that are kind of here for the future. That we have maybe stockpiled a few too many. We've got that Kendry Pius to come in as well from South America in 2025 when he turns 18. He looks a very good player. There's not space for all these guys. So some of them are going to be sold, and some of them, I said it at the time, some of these guys that we've signed, I don't think we'll ever see them play for the club. They'll just be bought for a profit, and they'll be loaned out for a few seasons, and then they'll be sold on.
Even the likes of Gabriel Solina, he's back out now. He's back out on loan. I knew he was never going to get a look in the first team this season or even look to stay on the bench because it's just going to slow down his development. But again, Petrovic, we haven't even seen him yet. And there were times sort of within the Carabao Cup as well, I was thinking, can Sanchez get a bit of a rest, let Petrovic have a go? Because when are we going to get a chance to see him? You're not going to drop. I doubt Poch is going to put him in the FA Cup. It's, depending on especially how we are during the league, because he's made such a statement that he wants to come out and win these domestic cups. The Carabao and the FA Cup is a bit of a must for him. So it is very difficult. Like you said, Cassidy playing for Leicester at the moment. He looked great. He looked great in pre-season. He was a real standout for me. Especially with some of his link-up play with Nkunku as well. So it was very. I wasn't surprised that he went back out on loan because obviously he came to us last season in the summer and then stayed with us for until January and then went on loan again. I forget who he went on loan to now.
We went to Reading for half the season.
He went out on loan to Reading. But again, with the purchase of Andre Santos, we worked so hard to get that visa through, get it pushed over the line, so many setbacks. We get him, he has a half decent preseason. Now he's gone straight out to Forest. He's getting no minutes. He's getting nothing
at all. Disastrous loan that's been so far. We're going to have to recall him in January and hope we can send him somewhere else.
I mean, but where do you want to send him to? Do you want to send him to somewhere in the Premier League? I don't know who's necessarily going to have him at the moment just for a 6-month loan, or do you send him to the Championship just to get a big run of game times, build up a bit of confidence, a bit of physicality, and just learn the English way of football?
Well, I think we're going to have to send him to the Championship because, as you say, I'm not sure if a Prem side would necessarily take him, not because he's not good enough, but I don't know for 6 months if there's going to be the need unless a team's picked up an injury. And obviously we've got no international slots left. So, he's either another Prem loan or it's to the Championship, which I think could be good for him. But as you say, there's so many players coming back. We have got a lot of players at the club still. Yes, we trimmed down the squad massively, but you sort of, when you forget the ones that are out on loan, the guys coming back from injury, the squad's still pretty big. There's definitely a lot more players than there are obviously spaces available in the match day squads. But yeah, look, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how it all works out. But with the guys coming back from injury, obviously, Badia Shields back in the mix a little bit now. Yes, we're still waiting for Lavia, Nkunku, Chilwell, Chukwuemeka, Chalobah coming back. Oh, he's not probably going to leave in January anyway. But
I think there was something about Fofana that just came out today as well. He's actually, I think he is rehabbing, his recovery is going really well. So there's a possibility that he could actually be back in December/January as opposed to the end of the season. So that's going to throw a big
I
spanner in
mean,
the works as well.
there's like, when you think about it, like, you sort of forget that half these players are even out of the club because they've been out for so long. You sort of you can easily forget, but the squad's actually decent. When you bring, obviously, I know the bench against Tottenham wasn't great. The bench, obviously, in the game before against Brentford was quite poor as well. But with these guys coming back from injury, we're now, like, when you get the likes of Lavia in the squad, when you get Nkunku's in, once Chilwell's back, once Chukwuemeka's back, like, you look at the bench and you're thinking the squad's actually pretty good, and we're now going to have decent options from the bench. Do you think a lot of people, maybe some Chelsea fans as well, do you think a lot of people have actually underestimated how decent this squad is? Because suddenly you're looking at some very good options from the bench.
No, 100%. Like you said, even Connie Chukwuemeka. I mean, honestly, before he picked up his knock, he was looking sensational. Scored his first goal for the club. You can see, obviously, how much it meant to him. But again, it's just going to be, I think, again, with that bench, it's just going to be, it's going to be a fantastic bench and a starting 11, regardless of who we start and who's on the bench. But again, it's just going to be very difficult to get the best out of all of them. So that's probably one of the biggest problems. It's not like we have somebody who can obviously be a guaranteed start. We've got some players in our squad who are guaranteed starters, but again, there are some players in our squad that we need to rotate, and obviously to give other players a chance to come in and fulfill that and keep players on their toes. I think it's very difficult as a fan to, I wouldn't say necessarily get excited, but at the same time get excited because you're looking at this team of prospects pretty much, and it's very difficult to win something when you've got a team of prospects. You do need experience on the bench. You need somebody to bring it on. Classic example with the game against Spurs. I feel like if we had some slightly more experienced players on the pitch, we could have calmed things down a little bit. We could have dictated the game far a lot better, and we could have got a couple more goals over the line. I think it's just that older bit of experience that we're lacking a little bit, which is a bit of a shame. But at the same time, like you just said, we've got a great team. That depth is phenomenal. Just looking about the talent that we can bring onto the pitch at any given minute.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the one that everyone's excited about seeing, obviously, it's a shame we've had to wait this long to see him. Hopefully, against Newcastle, we may well see him. Christopher Nkunku. Obviously, I think his injury put a massive spanner in the works. I think a lot of the pre-season plans and the plans going into the season were based around him being a mainstay in the team. And I almost felt like in the first few weeks, certainly, of him being out, we weren't really sure. Well, didn't feel like there was an alternative plan for his absence. Obviously, he's coming back now. Gallagher's done very well. Cole Palmer's doing great. Sterling and Mudryk have done well in parts as well. Where do you see Nkunku fitting into this team? Because he's obviously going to play, but he's going to have to earn his place in the side. I think a lot of people might think, you just drop Conor Gallagher out and we'll go with a pivot of Enzo and Caicedo, and Nkunku will play that just off Jackson or whatever. We'll have Palmer on the right and then Sterling or Mudryk on the left or whatever. But I don't think it's as simple as that, because Gallagher's done very well. I think Poch really likes him. And unless Gallagher goes through an absolute downturn in form where he's shocking for 3 or 4 games on the spin or maybe more, it's hard to say who Nkunku should displace.
No, 100%. I think it's going to be, again, it's one of the best problems that we've got. Where is he now going to fit into this team where we've got such a great player to come in with bags of experience? But I don't think you can drop Gallagher in this instance. I think that mid three of Caicedo, Enzo and Gallagher, they've built a real chemistry. They're playing really well off each other. And Gallagher's ability to just press in the final third and just keep running and running. I mean, the guy runs for 90 minutes, week in, week out. And I get tired even looking at him, honestly. It's just like, oh, God, how has he got an engine? But in terms of where does Nkunku come in, I think this is now up to Jackson now. I wouldn't mind potentially seeing him replace Nico, And it's a terrible thing to say, considering that we've just seen him score a hat-trick against Spurs. But and then it kind of, again, fits to the question we were talking about earlier with Breuer, because now Breuer then falls down that pecking order. But I personally, if he was to come on against Newcastle, I think you take Jackson off and see how he integrates up top as well. It's not his preferred position, but especially with the way that we're playing with Cole Palmer, religiously creating something out of nothing, it could really benefit the team. We know how Nkunku likes to play off a man also. He likes to get involved, gets in the mix of things, rapid player. I think if it was me and I had a fully fit Nkunku looking at the team going in against City, I think Nico would probably get the drop for me, as bad as that sounds, but he's just that quality of a player and you'd love to see him have a run up top, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair, I agree with that. I think also, come January, providing he stays fit and there's no setbacks or anything, I think Nkunku will get the nod over Broja to lead the line. I just think he's that more experienced. He's a more rounded player. He's a more of a finished article than Broja is. You sort of know what you're going to get from Nkunku, and I expect in January for him to certainly lead the line. But in terms of where he fits in now, I guess it's going to be that number 9 slot, because you can't drop Cole Palmer. Yes,
No.
yes, he played quite a lot on the left-hand side in pre-season. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to play off the left, although Sterling and Mudryk are both in decent form. But as you say, it's a very good problem to have. It's a problem you'd like to have rather than not having. And it's only going to be good for Chelsea to have a player of his quality to come into the side, and then someone dropping out, their quality to be able to come off from the bench and hopefully impact the game. But yeah, his return's going to be a massive plus. But most important thing is, though, not to put too much pressure on him. I'm seeing a lot of kind of people putting pressure on him. He's going to be like the Messiah. He's going to be the savior of Chelsea and like the savior of the season. We have to remember as well that this guy's not kicked the ball for us competitively. He's not played a single Premier League game. He wouldn't have played football for 4 or so months. Like, it's going to take him. It could easily take him 3 or 4 games. It could take him a month to actually get up to full match fitness again, find his feet in the league. So honestly, I don't even if he comes back against Newcastle or the game after, whatever game it may be, I honestly don't think we'll start seeing the best of Nkunku until next year.
Yeah, until sort of mid-Jan, potentially early Feb. But I mean, that's just looking at it from a realistic point of view. Like you said, it's been 4 months since he's kicked the ball competitively. Again, match fitness is going to play a big part of it, and also as well, coming into a new league, the adjustment. I mean, it's going to be monumental for him, and I think it's going to show with his experience how he actually develops with that, which is something that we've obviously been lacking from a striker over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the last strikers we signed from the Bundesliga, we went on to win the Champions League. Not saying we're going to win it next year, but
maybe qualify.
yeah, we might not even qualify. But again, I think it's just going to be very difficult for him to kind of integrate into that team again. So, which is why I don't see him particularly starting many games when he is fit to come back. You'll see him come on for maybe 10 minutes against Newcastle. I think you'll see him come on for 20 minutes and just slowly, and Poch is fantastic at, obviously at his job and man management. And it will be just don't go out there to look to get goals. Go out there to find your feet. Get comfortable with your surroundings, and then everything else will flow. The player that we purchased him for is the player that will come to light in the end. So I think once he gets comfortable in his environment, he hasn't played with half of this team, and especially during pre-season, we're changing the team every 45 minutes. So he's now got to build chemistry with all of these players. He's got to adjust to having Conor Gallagher behind him, or either be Cole Palmer or somebody else. You never know, or Carney. There's so many to choose from. So you need to see how they play, how you're going to play with them, and find a way of obviously working together to build the best out of each other.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, talking of, whilst we're on the subject of how players are going to fit in, one more that is probably going to be back for the Newcastle game as well. We mentioned him earlier, Romeo Lavia. A lot of, positive sort of vibes around him in terms of how good a player he is, a real talent. I mean, where's he going to fit in? Again, I think it's going to be another one of those that is going to be a rotation option. I think if you'd said to me at the start of the season when Lavia was here, I would have said to you, Enzo, Caicedo, Lavia, that's going to be Chelsea's best midfield. But now you've got a Conor Gallagher in a sort of spanner in the works, where he's done way better than anyone would have expected. His levels haven't necessarily dropped. And arguably, outside of maybe Cole Palmer, he's probably been Chelsea's player of the season so far. He's been absolutely brilliant. And he's shoehorned himself in as one of the first names on the team sheet, which is something I didn't think I'd be saying. So with Lavia, again, he's going to be eased in. We've got the options there in midfield, so it's not necessarily, we don't need to rush him back. We can take time with him. Poch is very good with not rushing players. You've seen with how he's reintegrated Reece James, Badia Shiel, etc. And I think it'll be the same, obviously, with Nkunku and Lavia. But once Lavia's up and running and he's fit again, do you think that is Chelsea's best midfield, or strongest on paper at least, Lavia, Caicedo, Enzo?
Possibly strongest on paper, but like you said, I think you just can't disregard Gallagher this season. There's a reason why he's been given the captain's armband in Ben Chilwell's and Reece James's absence. I mean, we all know the type of player that Lavia is, but again, I feel like potentially that Conor Gallagher's seemed to show, especially over this season, how much he can actually offer going forward and coming back. In certain games, he seems to drop quite deep and he's very effective. He seems to almost rotate with Enzo going slightly higher, and I just don't think that you would end up giving that with Lavia. You don't see Lavia getting into the final third, creating a bit of mayhem. He's sort of that player who, you know, who can dictate a bit more of the second third in the middle of the park. But I think with Conor Gallagher, he's slightly more of an overall player and can actually offer our team so much more going forward.
Yeah, Lavia definitely for me. I mean, obviously he scored a great goal against us for Southampton when Tuchel was still there last season. He's definitely more of someone that plays in a pivot or plays as a six at the bottom of that midfield three. That's definitely an option. And with like the games we're going to have coming up, particularly in the Christmas period, there's going to be a lot of games in a short space of time. I think we will see him feature fairly regularly, but it is going to be interesting to see how he beds in, how he fits in, what the balance of that midfield is going to be like. Because right now, you can't really say that any of those three in there shouldn't be in the team, because they should all be in there. So, but again, you know, good problems to have, problems that we've not had for a while, problems we've been wishing to have when all these players have been out injured. Now that they're starting to get close to coming back, yes, it's a problem, but it's very much a good problem to have. And, you know, when you look back at when we were winning Premier Leagues, you know, obviously under Mourinho the first time round, we had quality players, 2 quality players in every position. You know, we had Essien, Lampard, Ballack, Makaleli. We had, like, that time, you know, we had Robin, Duff, Wright Phillips, Joe Cole. Like, you know, you're having, like, you need, if you're going to win a league, if you're going to beat this Man City side, you're going to need 2 players of real top quality in every single position. And I think we're not there just yet, but I think we are starting to get to that point. And only then, I think, can you really start to make a go at this Man City side. You know, you look at Arsenal last season, very good first 11. As soon as a few injuries crept in, the drop-off in quality was massive. You look at Tottenham this season. I'm not saying Tottenham are title contenders by any means, but you look at Spurs this season, a very good first 11. As soon as a couple of players are missing through injury, like right now, who replaces Maddison? The drop-off in quality is massive if it's Lo Celso or someone else. You know, Romero banned and Van de Ven out injured. You're now looking at Eric Dyer as the centre-back that comes in, or an Ashley Phillips that came from Blackburn in the summer that hasn't even played for the side yet. He's 17 or 18 years old. That's what I mean. Like, if you've only got a decent first 11, there's only so far that can take you. So you have to have the squad depth. And I think now we're seeing that, you know, Chelsea do have this squad depth. It's just about putting it together on the football pitch. But mate, if we move ahead to Sunday, you know, it's a massive game. You never want to go into an international break on the back of a poor result. Obviously, there's no shame in losing to Man City. They're a fantastic side, probably the best side in the world. But at the same time, I think there's a big difference for us in this game. If we lose, which I think there's a high possibility we could lose, of course, that it's going to be about how we've acquitted ourselves in that game. How have we competed? Have we given a good account of ourselves? I mean, before we get into the game in a bit more detail, is that kind of your feeling around it? Like, if we do lose, it's kind of expected, but it's the manner in how we lose and kind of how we acquit ourselves will be determined sort of how we feel going away from that game and how we can sort of feel going forwards into future games.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, you know, we definitely have flaws in our team because we are such a young and new team. But again, I'm not expecting to go away with the win at the Bridge on Sunday. You know, I'd be pretty much over the moon if we end up, you know, having a good contested match and walking away with a draw. After that, I think, you know, City have lost to worse teams than us. You know, well-drilled teams that have actually been together for a while and not had as many injuries or issues that we've had going through this season. But again, I think, you know, anything's possible with this Chelsea team and just with Chelsea in general. I mean, I actually thought that we would beat Spurs.
I did as well. I felt more confident.
It was such a Chelsea thing to do, isn't it? Just you know, you're having a stinker of a season. Spurs are on an unbeaten run, and then we go to their home ground and just take all 3 points. But
I felt more confident about beating Spurs than I did about beating Brentford.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? You know, you kind of think about it.
A really strange one. But yeah, look, the City one's going to be tough. I mean, what do you think we're going to have to do? I know that might sound stupid, but like, I think it's going to be similar to the Arsenal game in terms of everything's going to have to be spot on from us. We're probably going to have a little bit of luck, and we're going to have to hope that City are slightly off it. If all those things come together, then we've got a chance of getting a positive result. But even if we defend well, which we have defended well for large parts of this season, they've just got so much quality that you just expect them to find the breakthrough.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this game is not necessarily going to be about technical ability. It's going to be about mentality. And I think if we go in to the game with the right mentality, believing that this is our ground. We can do this. We can get 3 points. That I think everybody will turn up on the day. And I think it's just how you're going to approach that going forward. Because I think if you go in there knowing that, every single player, you're only as strong as your weakest player. And if everybody just goes into that game with the strong mentality, just think, okay, well, we can do this. We're going to do this. Okay, we need to defend well. We need to attack well. Either catch them on a counter attack. I'm not sure how we're going to play. With Pep, it's always slightly difficult. You never know who's going to start. Doku last week had an absolute blinder. It wouldn't surprise me if he's on the bench. It's just how how Pep just works. So it's going to be very difficult to plan what we're going to do on the day going forward against City. But I think mentality is going to be key going forward. You've got Jackson, who's just scored a hat-trick. Who's to say he can't go get another 1 or 2 against City? It's not out of question. It's not unrealistic for a striker to score goals at home. I think you've got a strong midfield again of Enzo and Caicedo. I think the midfield is going to be a big battle on the day. I think those boys are going to have to come up par and pull up their boots and just absolutely go for it. Again, you've got Gallagher, who's just going to be running around playing that press. And then I think it's going to be a massive game for Cole Palmer, obviously, playing against your old team. And I'm not going to say it's going to be dependent on him, but I think how his attitude, how he's going to play on the day is actually going to dictate the game. If he doesn't let it get to him and he just thinks, okay, I've got something to prove here. You can either go 2 ways about that. You can go, I've got something to prove, and do too much and make a bit of an ass of yourself. Just trying to do too much, just trying to show the other players, this I should have been in your team. Or he can go the other way and just absolutely shy away from the occasion. So I think he seems to absorb the pressure so well at the moment, but I think a lot of it's going to fall down on him. And unfortunately, all eyes are going to be on him on the day because he has been Chelsea's best player this season.
No, he absolutely has. I mean, just whilst we're on him, I don't think anyone expected us to sign him in the first place. I think it was a surprise to everyone. And then B, I don't think anyone expected him to have the impact that he's had. Literally since the first time he came on the pitch as a sub, I think it was against Nottingham Forest, he's literally impressed every time he's been on the pitch. He's not had a bad minute in a Chelsea shirt so far. Now, of course, that can't continue every single game. There will be some down moments. There will be a run of games where he doesn't do so well. But what impresses me so much about him, obviously, yes, he's come through Man City. He's gone through probably the best footballing school, learning from Pep Guardiola, etc., and everyone up there, being surrounded by world-class players, a world-class setup, all the rest. But for me, it's just the fact that he never shies away from the ball. He always wants it. Whenever he gets on the ball, he always looks to make something happen. His range of passing is brilliant. His mentality is great. His confidence is second to none. And things like the amount of interceptions he makes in important areas, particularly in that final third. He just, as a player, he literally has seemingly got everything. How impressed by him have you been? Because it's definitely been a surprise, I think, not just to Chelsea fans, but to just football fans in general, how well he's done.
That's the thing. It's like you said, he doesn't shy away from anything. And I think I was talking to somebody the other day. They were just like, how would you sum up Cole Palmer from a neutral's point of view? Somebody that doesn't watch Chelsea sort of week in, week out. And I said, he almost looks like a KDB mixed in with a bit of a Hazard, because he's got that range. He's got that gift of just finding anything and picking something out of the pocket and putting the ball over the top, or just finding these wonder passes. And again, the Hazard-esque, where he can stand an opponent up and, try to take him on. He's not afraid. But again, I think he's got a little bit more, obviously he's got a great footballing brain in terms of when he can do this and when he knows he can take on somebody. I think there was a moment in the Spurs game against Spurs, with Reece James, where he took one of their players on, I can't remember who it was now, and he just turned it back and found the easy pass to Reece. It's just like, he's just been brilliant. He's just a joy to watch, from a Chelsea fan's point of view and possibly from a neutral point of view as well. Anything he seems to touch just turns to gold at the moment. And I think, that's just, again, it's just going to be, unfortunately, all down on him to how we're going to play on the weekend. But he's just been so cool, calm, and collective. That's how I'll describe him in every game.
It is every game. It's quite remarkable for someone that's still so young, someone that already has played more minutes for Chelsea than he ever did for Man City in terms of the Premier League. Yeah. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, City are regretting it or anything like that. They've got fantastic players: Grealish, Foden, Bernardo Silva, Doku, etc. Like, there's no shame in not quite being able to break through at Man City. It doesn't mean you're not a good player. You're still a top player. He's come to us, but I can't believe how quickly he's gone from sort of being on the periphery at City to being one of the main faces of this new look Chelsea project. Already a lot's going to kind of fall on his shoulders. Raheem Sterling, another one up against his former club. I thought he was terrible last season, but then again, so were the vast majority of the team. He's looked better this season. He's started okay. My issue with him is that he's not a young player anymore. He's experienced. He's been there. He's done that. Got the T-shirt in terms of Premier League football trophies, goals, assists, and all that stuff. Granted, good game against Spurs on Monday, but I need to see this on a more consistent basis. We didn't sign him to score goals against Luton, Burnley, and Blackburn in the cup. We signed him to make a difference in the big games. Okay, against Arsenal, he was all right. Spurs, he was okay as well. But these sort of games, you said you wanted to be the main man when you left Man City. You've returned to London. You're the highest paid player at the club. We need more from you on a consistent basis. And we're just not quite getting that right now. Yes, it's better than last season, but I just feel that in the big games where you really need someone to turn up, when you're looking at a very inexperienced forward line, you're looking for Raheem Sterling to do something. And unfortunately, more often than not, during his Chelsea career, he's not been able to deliver when we need him to.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail right on the head there. I've been very frustrated with him this season. Like you said, we don't, we haven't paid you all of this money, the big wages and the big signing fee just to come on and score against Luton and Burnley. It's not good enough, really. As it pains me to say about any Chelsea player, but it's not good enough. You are, the second most senior player in that squad, in that team, in that first team, bar Thiago Silva, and you need to really grab the ball by the horns and lead by example. It's very disappointing to see. I think there were several occasions. I think it was against Brentford, or it might have been against Spurs. Every time he got the ball, he had so much space in front of him. He just sort of put the brakes on a little bit and started slowing down. You're like, what are you doing? Run at him. We know what type of player he is, and the goals he can score for international level, and the goals he scored at City. So why is it so different now? You've got all of that experience. This is what we know that you're capable of. You can do it. So just go out there and do it. I don't know what it is at the moment, and you can't say it's difficulty for him settling in because he's an English player coming from an English club. So there's no translation barriers. Back to London, like you said. If anything, you would have thought he would have settled in a little bit easier with the home life, closer to his family. But again, it's not really working out. And given that, every time he starts on the team sheet, I'm just a bit like, okay, what Sterling are we going to get today? Are we going to get Sterling who's turned up against Luton, or are we going to get Sterling who's turned up against Brentford? It's so difficult to do. But then, like we were just saying, now I want to see Mudryk start over him. We haven't even touched base on Mudryk right now. I mean, two of them fully fit. I'll take Mudryk, because if Sterling's not attacking and scoring goals, I at least want to see a younger player who wants to make an impact and who wants to drive forward with the ball, who's not necessarily got something to prove, but feels like he has something to prove, regardless of his price tag. You can tell every time when Mudryk gets the ball, he's just hungry to score and wants to do the best for himself and the team, which is something that I don't necessarily get with Sterling. I don't get that vibe.
No, I hear it. I think too often with Sterling, like, you see games like against Tottenham where he's direct, he's taking players on, he goes back to that dribbling that we've all associated him with over the years. But you've got other games where he'll literally be like a mannequin. He'll just stand still when he gets the ball. He doesn't take anyone on. He's drifting inside, taking up space that Jackson should be occupying, like not stare. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're just like, some games he'll do what you expect from him and know that he can do. But in other games, he literally won't take any players on. He'll run into them. There'll be no defensive work rate. Like, there's basically like the sort of, you're getting the lack of consistency from Sterling that you'd expect to get from a player in their early 20s, someone like a Mudryk. You'd expect that sort of inconsistencies from a player like him. You wouldn't expect that level of inconsistency from a player like Raheem Sterling. Now, I'm not saying you have to be absolutely top level every single game. Of course, that's not possible for any player. But, you should be hitting, out of 5 games, you should be hitting 3 pretty decent performances out of 5 games. For me, if we go across a run of 5 games for Raheem Sterling, I think you're lucky if you get 2. Yeah. And that's not good enough right now. That has to be a lot better. Obviously, in terms of the lineup, I think, it will be pretty much similar to what we saw at Spurs. I guess the only thing for me is 2 things, really. I know it might sound mad, considering he just scored a hat trick, and he probably would continue with him. But is there any sort of conversation to be had about going back to that system we saw against Arsenal? Because I feel that if Mudryk had actually been fit and not missed 2 games with a slight knock, maybe Jackson doesn't even start that Spurs game.
Yeah. No, 100%. And again, it's like we said sort of at the beginning of the podcast now, he has scored a hat-trick, but at the same time, it's like, do you drop him? It's one of
I just don't think you can drop someone that's just scored a hat-trick. I mean, what sort of message is that saying? I just don't think you can do that. Even if you wanted to, I just don't feel...
No, you couldn't.
I just don't think you can.
Really. That's just going to crush his confidence. So something that you've worked, 2-3 months to build, and he's potentially there, or he could just be there, and now you're going to sub him off, or well, not even sub him off. You're just not going to start him. Again, I think that that'd be very hard to do. So I expect Nicholas Jackson to be starting. I think we're going to see a very similar lineup to last week. I think you're going to see, obviously Sanchez in goal, Reece on the right.
What do you think about the centre-back pairing, though? Do you think Colwell sticks at left-back? For me, I think Cucurella's done very well. I feel he should start at left-back, and then you've got a decision to make. Is it Disasi or is it Levi Colwell that partners Badiashile? Not Badiashile, but that partners Thiago Silva. I don't think Colwell works at left-back against the better opposition. We saw him completely stand off and get done by Kulusevski for the Tottenham goal. I think it's fine against a Brentford or a Forest like we've seen. I think when you're playing the top teams against the best wide players, I just don't trust him there. I'd be a lot more confident with Cucurella there. So for me, I think Cucurella's got to start at left back, and then you make a decision on whether it's Disasi or Levi Colwell to partner Silva.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Colwell getting dropped at this point, but I understand what you mean in terms of Cucurella. He's been somebody that's come out of the woodworks this season and absolutely dominated. You never would have thought that. He kind of fits into the bracket under Gallagher from last season, where there wasn't this level of high expectation, but since he's come in, since some of the injuries that we've had, by God, has he been amazing. But I would love to see him start against City on the weekend. Cucurella, to be fair, it's kind of going back not to what we were saying earlier, but you've been given a chance, you're taking it. And I think if you're kind of dropping Cucurella after these amazing performances, what kind of message does that then send to the player and to the rest of the team? So you can play well, you can play to the top of your ability, but you're still not going to get into the first team. I think it's very contradicting from a manager's point of view.
It's also pretty tough as well. It's not like you're missing out to a natural left back either. It's the fact that you're playing so well, and the manager's preferring a centre back out of position to play over you. Look, again, it's good. It's good problems to have, and either way, whatever happens, I still think that back line is pretty solid, and it will be much of the same. It might be the exact same team, or there'll be one change at the back potentially. I'd love Mudryk to come in and start instead of Sterling, but it's a big game. It's Sterling, it's experience. I can't see Pochettino I can't see Poch starting Mudryk over Sterling. I mean, I'd love that to be the case, but I just personally don't see it. But yeah, the team's good enough to do something. I mean, did you feel confident for this game or not particularly? I mean, obviously, just before that, what do you make of the home form, by the way? Because we're so used to Stamford Bridge being such a fortress over the years. I think it's one win in our last 13 Premier League games there. The only win in the league there is against Luton this season. Stamford Bridge is not a good place for us right now. Why do you think we're struggling so much there? I know the atmosphere is not great. Obviously, for the big games, it's a lot better. But for your run-of-the-mill games, it's not great. But it's got to be more than that.
Yeah. I think it's a mentality thing. I think a lot of these young players have obviously, Chelsea comes with a huge reputation and expectation also when you put on that jersey, week in, week out. And I think with some of these younger players, I think it's been very difficult for them to integrate into this team and play at the Bridge. So that could be a huge playing factor into it. And again, there's certain other factors, in terms of the chemistry building with teammates. But it's not the safest place for us at the moment. I feel like we're doing a little bit slightly better on the road. But again, I think going into the game on Sunday, I think you've always got to try and be a little bit optimistic when you're thinking of Chelsea these days as well. Like I said earlier on, I think I'll be very happy if we get a point. I'll be over the moon if we get 3 points. But, we can do it just depending on the mentality of the players going forward. I think, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to lose. You're not expected to win. So you've got to go out there and give it your all. And if you don't, then that's when things become an issue. We can go out there and get absolutely battered 4-5-0. I'd be more, annoyed if we didn't leave everything out on that pitch, because you can at least go, okay, you've tried and you were completely outclassed on the day. That's not a problem. But when you've got players, as we're talking about Sterling, who's not putting in that effort and we're still losing, that's when things then become an issue.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's very much a big difference between going out and giving it your all and losing because you're just not the other team's better, or the difference between not really trying, sitting in and getting hammered. I'd always rather lose by having a go. Simple as that. That's why that's why I found the criticism of us conceding that second goal against Brentford so odd, because it was the last minute. You send the keeper up looking for an equaliser. We're losing anyway, so if you lose 2-0 or 1-0, what difference does it make? That's why I'm not that fussed when we do things like that, because you've got to do everything you can to try and rescue a game. So, yeah, look, we just got to hope we turn up. I mean, what are your thoughts on Anthony Taylor reffing the game? I found that a strange one, purely based on the fact that obviously he was dropped to the Championship after giving that horrendous penalty for Newcastle against Wolves. He then made a dreadful decision in that Championship game, and then suddenly he's back in the Prem and he's got the biggest game of the weekend. And given his kind of affiliation with Chelsea in terms of not having favourable decisions in games for us, it's another unwanted ingredient to this game. I mean, I'm staggered he's got this game. Well, actually, maybe I'm not, because it's kind of what you'd expect from the authorities and how things are right now. But yeah, it's not great.
It's criminal. He shouldn't be allowed to ref a Chelsea game, especially over everything that's happened over the last few years. But I don't know how he's wormed his way back into the Premier League. I think once I saw that tweet that he'd been demoted to the Championship, and I think that was massive for me. You're like, thank God there is some sort of justice in the world. And then you see it come up the other day. Anthony Taylor's refereeing is the official for the game, and you're just like, my heart sunk, and you're just like, well, okay, we're now playing against 12 men. That's just what it feels like when Anthony Taylor's on the pitch. It's ridiculous. Some shocking decisions over the last few years.
Yeah, there's been some bad ones. I guess as players, we just have to kind of ignore that, just not let it get in our head, sort of thing, and just kind of, that they'll be aware of it, but there's you don't want to be sort of going out onto the pitch sort of with the referee in your head. You just want to have kind of full focus on the game and just give it your all. We don't want to have other stuff occupying important sort of mental space that the team needs, that the players need. So yeah, look, obviously a win may well put us into the top 7 or 8. A loss, we might drop back into the bottom half of the table. But I mean, just last thing, mate, just last sort of couple of minutes or so. What have you made of the start so far? Has it gone sort of? I guess we expected to have more points on the board than we do. But has it kind of largely gone how you would expected? Some good moments, some crap moments. It's kind of part and parcel of having virtually a new squad of entirely young players.
Yeah, I mean, if you, as I said earlier on, I'm a bit of a optimistic and a realist at the same time, so it's difficult to be the two. But if you look at this team sort of going in from pre-season with the run of fixtures we had in our first 4 games, I think we're predicted to win all of them. By the Liverpool game, we had probably the easiest run in the Premier League. So we did expect more points from where we are now, game week 11 into the season. But again, at the same time, you need to think you're not playing a game of FIFA or FC now. It's not magically just gonna work out for you. You can't just buy all of these great players and expect the chemistry to be there. I was on a podcast last year with a friend of mine, Joey Knight, who you guys, I think, know. Yeah. So we were talking about sort of the expectations towards the end of last season. And for me, I would have been very happy if we made it into top 8. That's a realistic view on things. And I think if we can implement that this season, if we get some form of European football this season, I think for me, that's a win. You're not necessarily going to go straight into the Champions League. And I think it can be a little bit more damaging if we go straight into the Champions League next season, to be honest. I think we're now at that point where we're at a complete rebuild, a complete new structure to the team, and a complete new structure to the club. So now we almost not necessarily have to start at the bottom, but we need to now find our feet and start taking our way up the ladder, notch by notch, step by step. It's not all going to magically happen overnight. But again, as much as we'd like to see it, I think, potentially beating Spurs was a bit of you know, but it, can't even try and figure the words for it now, but it was a difficult one to explain. It's something that you didn't expect, but it's a nice thing to have. So I think we will have those moments going towards the end of the season, and especially midway through the season. But in terms of expectations, I think we are where we are and where we need to be now as a club. You know, we can only go up from here. You know, I don't think there's ever going to be a big chance of us getting relegated. I know a lot of opposing fans, you know, they want to see that happen more than anything. It's just not going to happen. You know, we'll be happy to sit in 13th place and just continue to build something. You know, you can see the style of play that we're playing. Even in the games that we lose, we look great. It's just the final product. It's just these small things. And, you know, those things are going to come over time. You just can't expect it to click all of a sudden. So we're where we need to be for now, and we'll move slowly but surely up that table.
No, mate, I completely agree with you. I think it's one of them things where people always say, you know, the standards have dropped. Like I always say, like the standards haven't dropped. Like the standards will always be the standards that we set over the last 20 years. But too many people don't realize that right now we're not in a position to achieve the standards that we've set because of all the upheaval we've gone through. And the task is to get back to those standards, and we will get back there. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But as you know, football fans don't have patience, particularly Chelsea fans, but it's going to take time. And if it means that we have to spend 1 or 2 years coming maybe 7th or 8th, but then we're going to start winning again, I think after the last 20 years of winning everything, 1 or 2 years of not doing so well is quite a small price to pay potentially. But yeah, I think there's definitely positive signs for the future. And I think we can still achieve a lot of positive things this season. We are getting better. There's patterns of play, there's an identity. And once these guys get more used to each other, develop as players, everyone comes back from injury, we have a virtually fully fit squad, then I think you'll see us start to improve a lot, and there can be a lot for Chelsea fans to smile about. But, mate, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Always great to chat all things Chelsea. If people want to check out more of kind of your stuff and what you do, where's the best place for them to go?
Instagram, so just at the Chelsea Forum, Chelsea _forum. Yeah, so we're just on there. I'm going to be posting a predicted lineup for Sunday's game now. I think we pretty much covered it as well. So some of those names will be in there, and hopefully we can get those 3 points as well, which would be nice.
Yeah, perfect. Guys, there'll be a link to that in the description. Make sure you head over there, follow Chelsea Forum, show the guys some love, some great stuff over there. As always, people, smash a like on the video, subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV if you're new around here, and we'll catch you again in another episode soon.